My name is Wasim, and I am going to be a moderator for this session. And we start a session, second session for Seril, India's first ever virtual e-commerce webinar. And I hope you all had an interesting, insightful session, one panel discussion. So the topic for our session is optimizing e-commerce presence through marketplaces and carts. I would like to introduce our panelists for session 2, who are experts from different domains like marketplace management, e-commerce marketing, payment gateway, influence marketing, and logistics service providers. So the panelists for session 2 are Mr. Amit Monga, co-founder ANS Commerce, Mr. Anshuk Agarwal, co-founder and CEO at Yogi, Gaurav Sisodia, Director, Partnership and Alliance Pioneer, Dipesh Jain, Head of Growth Verb, and Ridhimar Majumdar, Founder and CEO of Pika. I would like to start a presentation and call up our first panelist, Mr. Amit Monga, and the subtopic for ANS Commerce is your answers to marketplace scale-up. Audience, please feel free to post your questions in question answer section, and those will be answered at the end of the session. Amit, over to you.
Thanks, Wasim. So I'll just try moving in the presentations. If I face any issue, I'll let you know. We'll need your help in moving the slides.
Sure.
Actually, can you help me move the slides, because I'm not able to see the marker for movement. Yeah, it's coming now. Okay. Wasim, can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Amit Monga. I'm representing ANS Commerce. We are a full stack e-commerce solution providers to brand, where we work with the 60 plus brands to manage their technology, performance marketing, marketplace management, warehousing, and logistics. And today I'm going to talk about marketplace scale up. Next slide, please. Whether you are a new brand or a brand who's already on an e-commerce journey, I'm getting a message that I'm not audible. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Amit.
Yes.
Okay. Can you move to the previous slide? It's actually going ahead.
Yes, Amit.
Okay, perfect. So whether you are a new brand or a brand who's already on an e-commerce journey, it is very important to get your marketplace model right. What I mean by that is it is important to identify what are the core marketplaces that suits your product category. Also identifying what are the long tail marketplaces that you want yourself to focus on different stages of your e-commerce journey, because you don't want to stretch yourself too thin too early. It is also important that you identify whether becoming a seller is something that a brand wants to do or not. So being a seller or being a brand, you will have to weight your options over there, which would eventually mean creating your digital asset or going by a distributor route or a alpha seller route, where you let somebody else do the selling and you focus on the branding part of it. I'll take up example of Amazon, for example. Even on Amazon, there are a lot of models through which you can sell on Amazon if you decide to go via brand as a seller route. For a new brand, it is recommended to start with Easy Ship, which is using your own premises to ship the products out to the end customer. And it also depends upon the product category. So if you are, for example, in a fashion category where you can't afford to split inventories, it is recommended to go with an Easy Ship model, then going by an Amazon FBA model, where you would be keeping the products in Amazon warehouse, and hence the need to replicate more inventory in a fashion category. Versus if you are in a personal care category where the assortments are limited and you can afford to create separate inventories for one marketplace, you can choose one model over the other. For a Easy Ship, the natural progression is towards SellerFlex, which is a model where your warehouse acts as Amazon's warehouse, which is something that you achieve at a certain scale. It is also important to answer a question whether doing e-commerce specific operations in-house versus giving to a specialist e-commerce player, because there are various models, not just a B2C drop shipment, but also something like a B2B2C in case of Myntra, or a B2B in case of likes of Big Basket, Nykaa, Grofers. So there's a lot more complexities that are involved. And on top of that, it is very important to maintain the SLA levels for each marketplace in order for your account to grow very well. Returns management is another piece which is very critical, which is very important to ensure that your sellable inventories are always healthy. So these are some of the questions. So getting your model right is one of the key thing in scaling your marketplaces. Next slide. Previous one actually. Yeah. Once you've got the model right, it is important to take care of the hygienes on each marketplace. And I'm going to touch base on few of those hygiene factors. There are more to it. I mean, I'm given the paucity of time, I'm going to touch base on the important ones. So it is very important to do the catalog management, which includes optimization of the content that you have, your titles, your keywords, especially on Amazon, where the ranking of a product is very critical and determined by the content and the customer experience. It is also important to utilize all the assets that are available on a marketplace. So for example, creating your own brand store on Amazon, doing A/B testing with a brand store, what kind of products you want to showcase over there, what kind of content you want to do there, to see which is giving you a better conversion. That is very important. Growth planning, what is more important is identifying what assortment works for what kind of marketplaces. So it is very important to know what is the strength of any marketplace in terms of the price points, in terms of the optimum level of assortment in a particular category for a brand to have the right visibility. Also planning the inventories right is a key part. The third piece is reconciliation. It is all right to grow, but it is not all right to grow unprofitably or making losses, because that will kill the entire purpose. So it is important to keep a check on the payment and inventory reconciliations, and each marketplace has their own nuances. So it is very important for every brand to understand the nuances of those and know exact cost heads that are coming on each marketplace for them to prioritize one over the other. Lastly, reviews and reputation management is very important, because that's a feedback that you're getting from an end customer, whether it's a product feedback or it is a seller feedback. It is important to monitor the reviews and ratings that you're getting, so that you can improve your products, better price the product, or improve the quality of the product, or the service that you're providing in case you are the seller. So lastly, I'm going to touch base on once you have taken care of the hygiene factor and you have identified the model, how can you leverage each marketplace's strength to drive the visibility and growth of your business. So every marketplace has their own set of levers that they provide to sellers and brands to improve their visibility and business. And it is important to plan your calendars or plan your resources well to leverage each one of them. So for example, Amazon has a panel called Amazon Marketing Services, where you can drive CPC driven campaigns, whether it is headline searches or sponsored ads or product display ads. That's a tool that is given to brands to plan their campaigns. On top of it, you can work with the category guys to drive CPM promotions, where it's a display promotions that helps you position your brand well on different assets available on Amazon. If you are selling through Cloudtail, then VPC, vendor powered coupon, is a tool that is very important. Subscribe and save is very important in case of a gourmet or an FMCG category, which helps you get repeat customers. And getting the price and discount promotions right basis the calendar of Amazon when they are planning the promotions, etc. That is very critical. In case of Flipkart, they have a similar thing called Flipkart ads, which can be leveraged. What works very well on Flipkart is product opt-ins, where you can opt in a certain SKUs into certain promotions, which helps you improve the visibility of your certain products. Similarly, on Myntra, CPM promotions are something that boost the visibility of the product, and discount opt-ins and price promotions is another way to participate in events and improve the visibility of products. In case of Big Basket, Nike, and Nykaa and Grofers, a very interesting piece that helps brand reach out to the right target audience is product sampling, and that's something which we encourage every brand to do. In which case you are actually reaching out to a sample set of audience and giving them samplers as part of Nykaa Big Basket strategy, and then doing CPM driven promotions on those set of campaigns, those set of target audience, to see how much is the conversion rate, because that gives you a fair sense of the target audience that you want to target on. Other than this, you can also run performance marketing campaigns, which is getting traffic from Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, etc. on the marketplaces. Although it is recommended to go this model on a brand store and not on marketplaces, because you don't get the complete feedback loop. But if you really are focused on improving your growth on marketplaces and you want to push traffic outside of marketplaces, that's another strategy that you can go for. Given the paucity of time, that's it from my end. Happy to answer questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Amit, for the insightful presentation. And I'm assuming that there must be many people in the audience who would be planning to start up the e-commerce business. Probably this information shared by Amit would be very, very helpful for them. So coming to the next speaker for our session 2 is Mr. Anshuk Agarwal. The subtopic for Adiyogi is optimizing market website presence through social media marketing. Anshuk, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Wasim, and thanks, Amit, for that insightful presentation on ENS and how to scale marketplaces. So today I'll be talking about web store. Just before starting, Wasim, have you given me access to the presentation?
Yes, Anshuk, we have given you the access.
Yes.
Anshuk, the access is with you, or you can over the slides.
Yes, absolutely. So good morning, everyone. My name is Anshuk. I'm one of the co-founders of Adiyogi. Over the last 2 years, we have worked with close to around 200 odd brands in helping them scale using social ads. When I say social, I'm talking about Facebook and Instagram primarily. So today, as part of this presentation, I'll talk about 2 key things. One, if you're scaling on social ads, what are the 4 levers you should be thinking about? And second, we'll talk about some brands and how they have efficiently scaled using Facebook and Instagram ads. All right. So first question, I think a lot of people ask me is, if you're selling on Amazon and selling on Google, let's say, why do you need to build your own brand store, or why sell on social using Facebook and Instagram? Now, very simply, let's think about a brand selling t-shirts, right? There will be a great set of people who will go to Amazon.com or Myntra and search for a t-shirt and buy. But there would always be a share of people or your potential customers who are not searching for a t-shirt, who are not searching for your products. They would see your product on a social platform like Facebook and impulsively buy it. Now think of it as the former being going to a mall and stepping directly into a UCB store and buying a t-shirt, and social equivalent to going to a mall to watch a movie, and on the way back you see a t-shirt of UCB and you impulsively buy it, right? So you need to answer this question for yourself, which is, what percentage of your customers are impulsive purchasers versus intent purchasers? And that will give you an idea about how much can you scale using social. Now, before we begin, a case study of a brand, Clarks. The question is, can a brand really scale using social? And the answer is yes. 2 years ago, Clarks in India had 2% of their sales coming from social platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And today they get 30% of their online sales from social platforms. And they would like to scale this to 50% over the next couple of years. So social could become a very effective acquisition strategy for your e-commerce platform. And just a carrot for all of you present here. Due to COVID, the cost of ads on Facebook has come down. This is actual cost of ads across 100 brands we work with. During COVID, it was 75% down. Today, it's around 50% down, but the cost is going up. So if you're an e-commerce brand, next 2 months is going to be a great opportunity. While the ads remain cheaper on Facebook and Instagram and the delivery has opened, this might be a great time to exploit your social ads. All right. So now coming to the efficiency, I'll talk about 4 key levers which anybody can use to get efficiency from social ads. The first one is, how do I find relevant people on Facebook and Instagram? Second is, how do I get them to see more products? Third, how do I reduce dropouts on my website and get them to convert? And lastly, how do I make them buy high value products? Together, these 4 levers are mutually exclusive and they will determine the return on ad spend you get on your social ads. So coming to the first one, how do I find relevant people from Facebook and Instagram? Now, a lot of you would think about the moment we talk about relevance, you will say which cities to target, which age to target, which gender to target. That is absolutely the right way of thinking about. But one big factor of relevance is your ad copy. A lot of you may not realize why that is the case, and I'll talk about exactly that. On the left side, you see a brand W for Women. There are 3 key specific elements in the ad copy which are noteworthy. Number one, if you see, they are promoting a specific product on the website. So they are not running an ad of a brand or a category. They are promoting a product, because what that happens is the people who land on your website are the ones who like your product. Number 2, they have price clearly mentioned. Very important. You need to pre-qualify your audience before they land on your website. Whether it is a 500 rupee product or a 5,000 rupee product, the price is an absolute mandatory thing in an ad copy because you want relevant people on your website. And number 3 is call to action button, shop now. Now there are options, learn more, know more, but trust me, you want to get people with the intent to purchase, only then they will purchase on your website. So very 3 important things in the ad copy if you want to get relevance. Now going on, the second is example of a brand, Suta. When you want to get relevant audience, there is a feature on Facebook. It's called as lookalike audience. Essentially what it does is it tries to figure out the most relevant people or most closest people to your customers on Facebook using Facebook's own algorithm. So what really worked for them is they created a lookalike of their high value purchasers and a lookalike of their frequent shoppers, and that gave them a very good result on Facebook ads. One point to add there, very important, optimize your campaigns for purchases. Optimizing for traffic or optimizing for clicks may not give you the best performance. So we spoke about how to get relevant people from social platforms. The second key important thing is, how do you get them to see more products on your website? This is very important because the more products they see on their website, on your website, the more likely they are to purchase. Now I'll talk about an example here, which is about when you click on the social ads, not all people land on your website. We have seen that in general, there is a 20% dropout from the time when you click on the social ad, like on Facebook ad, to when you land on the website. And this 20% dropout is due to human behavior. People might have clicked by mistake. They might have changed their mind. But for some brands we work with, this dropout is as high as 50%, which means if you're spending $10,000 on social platform, $5,000 are going down the drain because those people never even land on your website. And this number is not visible on Google Analytics because Google Analytics only shows you once people have landed on your website. Why is this dropout so high? It's because your product pages or your websites are not loading faster. You probably have too many pixels in the header, which might be slowing it down. So very important to measure this metric. In this case, we saw a 36% drop for a brand, Saint G. Now you got people to land on your website. It's important that you land them on the right page of the website. What we have here is 2 ads which Metro is running. One of them shows multiple products and lands people on the category page. Second shows a single product and lands people on the product page. In almost all cases, landing people on the product page gives you a better efficiency than landing people on the category page, purely because the lesser the number of clicks a user wants to do on your website to convert, the higher the conversion rate. If you land people on the category page, they would have to scroll through multiple products to find the right product. So in this case, Metro got a 15% higher efficiency just by landing people on the product page. So you got them to see products. The third lever I will talk about is how do you remove dropouts on your website to increase the conversion rate. And I'll be talking about a men fashion brand. What we have here is what we have is a video of the website experience. While you're looking at the video, just try to answer in your mind what could be the reasons why users are dropping off. So this is the home page of the brand. The person has clicked and gone to the product page. As you can see, there are multiple call to actions on the product page. There are some social icons on the product page. And when you scroll down further, you would see some more links on the product page, right? So what I'll do is I know you would have thought about a few reasons. I'll go to the next slide and I'll talk to you about what are the reasons as per me. Number one, they had social icons on their product page. Now I know a lot of you like social icons like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, but they are a disaster to conversion rate. Imagine you're paying Facebook to get people to your website to convert, and just before they're converting, you're showing them other cool products from Instagram or a Facebook icon, which will divert them to the Facebook page. We saw a 50% drop in sales of one of the brands we work with just because they installed an Instagram feed on the checkout page. It's an absolute disaster. The second, which you could see, was investor relations links. Now, these are people who are buying your products. They are not interested in your annual report. Why would you want to show them an investor relation link on your product page, right? Similarly, too many call to action buttons. Check availability at store is not a great idea because these are people who are willing to buy your product online. The moment you show check availability at store, they get digressed. They would click on it, they would go to a Google Maps, see if there is a nearby store, and in the process, they will lose interest. Similarly, add to bag, you might question what is the difference between add to bag and add to cart. But trust me, Amazon has written the rule book for e-commerce. If Amazon calls it add to cart, then it's add to cart. People get confused when they see add to bag. So small things on the website makes a huge impact. In this specific case, we saw a 50% jump in conversion rate just by making these changes. Now that means your social ads are giving you a 50% higher efficiency without even touching your Facebook and Instagram campaigns. That is the one point which I want to drive everybody. If there's one takeaway, that's the one takeaway, that your efficiency is not impacted purely by Facebook. And the last lever, last 2 minutes, is about how do you get them to buy high value products. Now, if somebody comes to your website and buys the cheapest product on your website, let's say, for example, a 300 rupee keyring, right? You are not going to make money off it because most likely you would have paid Facebook 400 rupees. You would pay your delivery provider another 100 rupees and maybe a set of logistics cost. And there is no money to be made in a 300 rupee purchase. So what you need to be very cautious is your website should become a platform for selling high value products or premium inventory. Discounted inventory might not give you the best efficiency on your website. And I'll give you an example of TGL company. They sell tea. Their average order value was close to around 700 rupees. Now, a very simple math, the best case click from Facebook costs around 10 rupees in a normal scenario, not a COVID scenario. Best conversion rate on your website is 3%, which means out of 30 people, 1% is purchasing, which essentially means your cost per sale is never going to be lower than 300 rupees. So if you're selling a 700 rupee product, your profitability is going to be a big concern. So what's the solution there? Sell bigger packs. Instead of selling a pack of 1, sell a pack of 2 or a pack of 3 so that you can increase the average order value. And that's not the only way of increasing average selling price. Shri and Sam sells utensils. They are very active on marketplace. As you can see on the screen, they sell a pack of 6 katoris or 6 glasses for 449 rupees. If you sell this on your website, you will not make money. So a better strategy would be that you can sell your dinner set, which is like 2000 rupees on your website, because that is where you will make money. So figure out a way of filtering your products or segmenting your products for your brand store when you are selling using social ads. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope I was able to give you some levers on how to efficiently scale your brand store. Over to you, Wasim, for the next talk.
Hi, Anshul. Thanks a lot for the insightful session and sharing your thought on the challenges faced by the e-commerce brands in scaling up via social ads. And most important, talking on the 4 levers for increasing efficiency of the social ads. Thanks once again. I call upon our next speaker. So I would like to call upon our next speaker, Mr. Gaurav Shishodia. And the subtopic for this pioneer is global e-commerce brands gets built on the back of a smooth payment transaction. Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, Wasim, and thank you, Anshuk. As usual, your presentation was very interesting. So I think in first 2 sessions we've primarily spoken about one on selling on marketplace. Then Anshuk did speak a lot about how do you optimize your web store sales. What I'm going to talk about is while it's good to sell on marketplace as well as web stores, it's even better when you're doing cross-border sales. So I'll present some interesting data. I hope that you guys will like it and may learn something from it. Moving on. Before I start, brief introduction about me. I work with a company called as Payoneer. We are a cross-border payment platform. We work with more than 2,000 odd marketplaces across the globe. You name it, whether it's Amazon, Walmart, Wish, Lazada, Linio, you name it, and we work with them. So primarily, I'm going to cover about cross-border trade. So for my first few slides, we'll talk about why cross-border. If you look at this slide, 2010, it was a $15 trillion opportunity business. By 2020, it became $50 trillion. It's actually multiplied by 3 times in last 10 years. So, and if I move on to the next slide, again, the way to read this slide is orange bars are buyers who buy cross-border from cross-border sellers, and blue is buyers who are buying from domestic sellers. If you see from 2014 to 2020, the orange bar is growing way faster than the blue bar. In layman terms, what it means, people are buying more and more cross-border. People are exploring new products. If you look at cross-border opportunity, it's almost 50% of 2.1 billion shoppers are actually buying from cross-border. The CAGR of a cross-border sales is actually at 21%. And if I compare it to retail growth, which is a single-digit number, I mean, it's a no-brainer that you need to start selling cross-border, and whether it's marketplace or through web store. Moving on, and again, so when it comes to cross-border, as Anshuk said, there can be one of the ways is having your own web store. But what we recommend is you should try and experiment with selling on marketplaces. Prime reason being, you don't have to spend too much on finding a customer. Figure your niche and in parallel, then start building your brand. So US has always been the biggest market when it comes to e-commerce and cross-border e-commerce. With players like Amazon, now Google is getting into this business with Google Shopping and Google Express, Etsy, eBay. Another very interesting opportunity which is coming up now in a cross-border business is Middle East. Amazon bought Souq, and now they're using UAE to sell in other geographies like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and a lot of those geographies. One data point, one data point which is very important is India is the second biggest exporter to UAE. People tend to buy a lot of goods from UAE, from India. So it's again an interesting opportunity which is coming in. And if I start looking at Southeast Asia or East Asia from that perspective, there are big names like Alibaba, JD, Shopee, Amazon, Japan. Again, you need to choose which market to start with, some little bit of research in terms of categories which get sold. Start with the marketplace also, but don't forget that you should start looking at an opportunity to build your brand through web store. This is my favorite slide. This is my favorite slide. Reason being, what we have done is we have looked at data where we are saying if you're a traditional firm, you will have 3 to 4% of exporters. Out of that, if you're an e-commerce firm, there'll be 30 to 40 exporters. And if I were to look at the business survival rate, your traditional SME, out of 100, 30 to 50% survive. But when it comes to e-commerce, the rate doubles, 60 to 80% survives. And the last one is my favorite. Average growth for a domestic e-commerce is 58% versus 91% for cross-border e-commerce seller. Now we are seeing, with physical stores being shut, people have moved online. I will strongly urge people to think not only moving online, moving cross-border. Again, when it comes to e-commerce for us, China is the one who's written the gospel here. If you look at 2015, e-commerce export was 19%. By 2020, it went up by 36% to 37%. If I overall look at how it evolved, there were growth of domestic e-commerce marketplaces, large domestic marketplaces, and then it evolved to a cross-border. What we see in India is very similar. We've seen Amazons and Flipkarts of the world coming in. We're seeing bigger players who are coming and selling. Then there are large domestic marketplaces which are already there. Domestic sellers primarily right now are selling domestic within the country. I think the next phase is they will start selling cross-border. Moving on, last slide from my perspective. What's important to look for in payments is very clearly multiple things when you choose a payment partner. First and most important is compliance. Does your payment partner has regulatory licenses? Does it have capability to sell in the markets you want to sell in? Second is, do they solve the compliance aspects of it? Third, most important aspect is, do they have the relevant security, which is is it PCI DSS compliant? So choose wisely on the payment partner, because it will actually decide whether you're making money or not. Then there is obviously customer acquisition, where Anshuk spoke about a lot on a web store perspective. Then there is logistics, and obviously what you need to take care of is when it comes to language. If you're selling in Spain, you need to have it in Spanish. I think that's it from my side. And over to you, Wasim.
Hi Gaurav, thanks a lot for your insightful presentation and sharing your thought on cross-border sales, and also choosing the right payment partners. Of course, this would help our the audience, the sellers, to have take the right decision moving forward. So the next speaker, the panelist for a presentation is Mr. Dipesh Jain, and the subtopic for verb is influencer marketing in post-COVID-19 area. Dipesh, over to you.
बस 1 मिनट होल्ड कीजिएगा.
Dipesh, are you able to assess?
The control is with Dipesh. Dipesh can use the keys also on the left hand side. Yes, Dipesh, you can click those keys and you can hover the slides.
Dipesh, we can't hear you.
Dipesh, could you please check if you are on mute? If it is so, then please unmute yourself or please check your microphone.
Dipesh is on unmute. We are not able to hear him.
But he's controlling the screen.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you are very much audible to us, Dipesh.
Yes, Dipesh.
Perfect. I'm sorry, there was some technical problem. I think it's over now. I'll put on my video also. I switched it off, assuming it was a bandwidth problem.
Please go ahead.
So, thank you, Wasim. Thank you for handing it over to me. And thank you, Amit, Anshuk, and Gaurav for those insights into the e-commerce trade. What I'm going to cover today is talking about influencer marketing and how it is changing the face of marketing in today's world where social media has become so much important. I will start with an honest submission that influencer marketing is not something which is new. It has been there for ages, and brands have been using it for doing their marketing and for making an influence on the consumers for a long period of time. Of course, it has been known by different names. It could be named as paid advertisements or celebrity endorsements, or in the form of brand ambassadors. So influencer marketing is not new to a marketeer. It just keeps changing its face and the channels. And in today's context, I will start with making a quick definition about it. I'm unable to switch the slides. No, I can do it.
Yes, please.
Please move to the next slide if somebody can. I'm unable to do it from my screen.
Yes, please. Good. I'll do it.
Yeah. I think we have moved forward. If you can just move back.
Dipesh.
Can you just move back? You've moved forward on the screen. Yeah, one more before this one.
Yes, Dipesh, you have the SS.
Yeah, I'm able to do it now. So influencer marketing is basically a way of doing marketing where you are able to identify certain influencers in the marketplace who have the capability to make an influence on the minds of the consumer and also have the reach to reach out to the larger audience and thus have a larger impact for the brands. Influencer marketing, the first question which comes when you talk about influencer marketing is it really effective? And the answer is yes, of course it is effective, because 70% of the teams, they believe that influencers influence them more than traditional celebrities. and a majority of people believe that their influencers understand them better than their friends. And 6 out of 10 people would say that they would buy something which their influencers have advised them to. And likewise, influencers have a large impact on the minds of the consumers. And a study by Thomson states that the average media value earned on a dollar spent on influencer marketing is about $6.5, which is way higher than any other marketing channel which can be used by any brand. This is also depicted by some of the data which coming in from the last year. Data from 2019 states that the average earned media value from a dollar spent on influencer marketing was close to about $6. And also the fact that various social media platforms are offering a very high engagement rates. Talking about TikTok, with a micro influencer who has about 1,000 influencers or 1,000 followers, the engagement rate could be as high as 9.38% on TikTok, and on Instagram it could be as high as 7.2%. So all the more reasons for the brands, because of these two reasons: one, because of earned media value, and because of the high engagement rates, to embrace influencer marketing as a channel of choice. This is a case study from a premium Swedish watch company, Daniel Wellington, which started in 2011 with a small capital of about $15,000 and has turned into a $220 million company in just 4 years of time, using influencer marketing as the main strategy for marketing. And in the process, they have used a lot of creators who would wear their watches and then put some posts or videos and make an impact on the consumers. And in the process, they have generated a lot of content which is reusable, not just today, but maybe in the times to come also. Coming to India's story, there is a convergence which is being observed between the urban India and the rural India, or I would say tier 2 or tier 3 cities. While TikTok till about a year back used to be a phenomena more prevalent in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, urban India has started flocking to TikTok, especially in the COVID era. And TikTok is becoming the highly used social media platform. And on the other side, tier 2, tier 3 cities are becoming a choice for e-commerce platforms. Like Flipkart is said to be doing almost like 60-70% of their business in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, while Amazon is doing in excess of 90% of their new customers coming in from these cities. So urban India is also coming onto the platforms which were earlier used by tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and the tier 2, tier 3 cities are coming into the mainstream where urban India used to be. So there's a convergence which is being seen. And with this conversion in place and COVID factor acting on it, there is a spike in social media users, new social media users, which has been observed in the last 2-3 months. So some of the data on the app downloads suggest that other than Arogya Setu and some gaming applications, TikTok saw the highest number of downloads, close to about 10 million downloads just in India. And the average time a user spends on internet or social media has increased from 3.13 hours to about 4.5 hours. And there is a huge boost to the video content because it's very, very engaging and has a direct impact and an immediate impact. And COVID, from a influencer marketing perspective, has acted as a catalyst to the industry, and even the large brands have started coming onto the platform. So this slide shows, okay. Yeah. So this slide is showing basically the, sorry, I moved one slide forward. Yeah. So there's a shift in combo and Berger and Surf Excel. who used to earlier resort to the conventional marketing channels, have started using the influencer marketing or the social channels to a large extent. Campaigns like Smile Deke Dekho by Lay's and Swag Step Challenge by Pepsi, they have seen a huge engagement, billions of viewers and billions of followers who are following these campaigns. Now, some of the industry facts which would drive the influencer marketing industry going to be tomorrow is that the industry as a whole is growing at a very, very fast pace. Last year itself, there is a 49% growth which has happened in the influencer marketing industry at a global level. And on an average in the last 5 years, the industry has grown on an average rate of about 55%. Also, one of the study claims that the average contribution of influencer marketing in the overall marketing spend of a brand is in excess of 10%, and that's being said by more than 78% of the people who participated in this survey, in the study. And more than 40% of the brands are going to spend in excess of, and they're already spending in excess of 20% of their overall marketing budget. Another interesting phenomena which is happening in the influencer marketing space is that there is a major shift from macro influencers to, or mega influencers to micro influencers. The ratio of mega versus micro influencer, which used to be 1:3 in 2016, in just 3 years of time, it has shifted in favor of micro influencers to 1:10, which is a significant jump, and which actually is quite relatable to the fact that there is a strong penetration of social media which is happening into tier 2, tier 3 cities and making an impact. Now, amidst all these dynamics, what is becoming important in the influencer marketing space is some of the challenges which the industry might face is the quality of the influencers which a brand is able to engage, and their ability to automate the process. This is very, very important, because with the number of campaigns increasing, for a brand to manage it on a manual mode is practically impossible. And also the time to launch a campaign becomes very, very high if you have multiple campaigns to launch. And of course, the cost is very, very high. So the next round of innovation which is happening in the influencer marketing space is in form of influencer marketing platforms. US, this has already reached to not a maturity, but close to maturity stage. India has just picked up the pace, and there are several influencer marketing automation platforms which are coming into the picture. And what they intend to do is make the entire life cycle of an influencer marketing campaign smooth, easy, cost-effective, and timely. And this is my last slide, which basically talks about a cost comparison of the way influencer marketing is being done at this point of time versus it would be done with automation coming in and with influencer marketing platforms coming in. So the entire process of an influencer marketing campaign involves identification of influencers, reaching out to influencers, negotiating with them, managing their content, and then ultimately monitoring the campaign and its efficacy and making tweaks on the fly. And at a rate of about $40 an hour, there's a spend of about $8,000, which a brand would end up spending for doing a campaign of 20 influencers in a manual mode. Whereas in an automated case, all these processes of identification or reaching out or content management and monitoring the campaign, they get automated, and the whole campaign can be managed in just 10 or 15% of the overall cost, which in other cases would have been about $8,000. So that is what I wanted to emphasize upon 2 points to sum up. One, influencer marketing is becoming the channel of choice, not just for smaller brands, but also for larger brands. And it is inevitable for a brand to have it as a core strategy. And the second point is embracing of influencer marketing platforms, which is fast becoming the phenomena, given the cost benefit it brings and given the efficacy it brings on the table. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. Over to you, Wasim. I'm open for any questions.
Thanks, Dipesh, for such a knowledgeable and insightful presentation, and most important, sharing the case study on Daniel Wellington's success story, and also talking about the challenges which brands specifically faced. Thanks, Dipesh, once again. I would like to call upon next panelist, Ridhiman Majumdar. The subtopic for Picker is robust e-commerce logistic is the key to customer delight. And I'm sure many of the audience would be very keen to hear this when it comes to the logistics service provider. Ridhiman, over to you.
Sure. I've already started receiving a lot of queries regarding that.
Yes.
No, sure. So I guess I'll check. You have given me the control?
Yes, Ridhiman, it's with you.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Ridhiman. I'm one of the co-founders and I'm the CEO of Picker Technologies. We're an end-to-end logistics solution for e-commerce companies and marketplaces. So in this session, what I'm going to cover is, continuing to the other panelists, is how the physical aspect of e-commerce player, and that is the logistics, attribute to the customer delight factor. And this is one of the main factor, right? Logistics, without logistics, customer delight cannot be delivered physically, right? So continuing with starting with the definition, right? What is e-commerce logistics, right? Unlike traditional logistics, right? When we think about e-commerce logistics, it's not like trucking or shipping, right? E-commerce logistics, basically, when we start with e-commerce logistics, it starts with branded shipping, right? That's what we start with. Your package shipping, that's what your end customer will identify with, right? That's what's the starting point of your shipping. The second thing that comes into picture is your intelligent courier selection. Until unless you select the best courier partner, you are ruined in the whole process. The third thing is the faster courier delivery. I think that may not be the current scenario going by the COVID it's going on, but since the state boundaries are like a little bit not getting it, currently acting as a hurdle for it, but express delivery is a strict mandate for e-commerce partners or like marketplaces. Like without it, you are going to get ruined. The fourth thing is, once the parcel is shipped, the only connect between you and your end customer is robust tracking. Without that, like your end customer is like in haywire, right? You have to give a robust tracking, right? And by robust tracking, I don't mean like just providing a tracking, right? Even like, I don't want to name them, but even India Post gives you a tracking, right? But that doesn't mean tracking, right? For the namesake of giving a tracking, don't give them tracking. Give them a proper tracking with an estimate of everything, right? With a proper UI. The fifth thing is the last mile experience. I'm going to reiterate it in every slide. Maybe it's boring, but understand it. You are in an online selling business. You are not in the offline selling business. In offline, you have a physical touch, but in the online selling, last mile is your only physical contact. So you have to have that amazing last mile experience. I'm sure a lot of people can like say and point out at me that you might also have like a lot of bad experience, but yes, I had my scar tissues with my customers also, but last mile is, you have to make it better. So the next, coming to the next slide, Wasim, can you help me with that? I'm facing some, yes. Coming to the next thing. So what are the relevant factors that were, that are essential in the pre-COVID and that will be relevant going forward? So the delivery boys comments, right? That are very critical. Fake comments, right? One fake comment can ruin your one loyal customer. Remember, one loyal customer means repeat customers. As an online brand, you understand loyal customer means repeat customer, right? Repeat customers are most important thing, because as Anshuk said, and a lot of other panelists said, that you get your loyal customer through social media ads and a lot of like cost expenditure, right? So loyal customer, if you lose your loyal customer through one delivery boy's fault, you lose a lot of cost to that. The second thing is turnaround time. Slow turnaround time means an increased delight, right, in the customer's thing. And again, an increase, like decreased delight in the customer's experience means increase in the RTO probability, because customer will refuse that packet, right? The third thing is, again, I'm saying, reiterating the same thing, is the rude last mile behavior. Because if the last mile person doesn't behave properly with your customer, the customer will not like this whole experience and will not again come to your website again. Chances are very high will not come again to your website. So you have to select your like delivery partner in a way that your delivery partner is such that it's not based on cost, it's based on a brand, proper brand. The fourth thing is, you have to decrease the number of touch points beyond between your end customer and the your website, because the more the number of touch points, it will lead to more confusion. The fifth thing is the number of notifications. See, nowadays there are a lot of notification things. It may be through SMSs, it may be through calls, it may be through apps. So you have to work it out with the logistics partners. You get it through the API integrations, but it has to be more and more efficient. Until unless it's efficient, your end customer will again be confused. Get the UI done properly. Until unless it's done efficiently, your end customer is again at haywire. Coming to the next slide. Now, what changed after the COVID scenario happened and after that whole the customer behavior changed? Now, in a company, we have seen this whole data that changed, that pre-COVID, customer used to prefer that whole COD orders. Now, 60% of the customers used to order COD orders. Now, in a company, we have seen 34% of that same customers now started ordering COD orders, right? So 60% of the orders started preferring prepaid orders. So prepaid delivery orders are now the new normal. So prepaid deliveries, now you have to incorporate prepaid delivery. So this is a knee-jerk reaction. So this is not something that you have to incorporate. So this is a customer behavioral change. So you have to have that in your website. So you have to have that wallet. So you have to have everything in your website. The second thing is the contactless delivery. So you have to have that. So in future, even if you give the COD feature in your website, you have to give the UPI link through the delivery partner. So even if you give the COD, you have to give the UPI link through the delivery partner. So it's available through every delivery partner. So the proper delivery partner, but not through the cheapest delivery partners. It's not available through the cheapest delivery partner. So the third thing is the right delivery partner. So what I'm saying by right delivery partner is not the fastest. What I'm saying is nowadays, a right delivery partner means one non-safe delivery can lead you to a legal problem, right? You got it, what non-safe delivery means. The fourth thing is time-sensitive deliveries. See, nowadays, slot-based delivery is the new in thing. So you have to give them the slot-based deliveries. The fifth thing is NDR. So NDR, although it means like NDR, although it means the non-delivery report, but NDR nowadays it means it's need of the hour. So you have to cooperate with your delivery partner more for the time that for the sake of nowadays, because the state boundaries are closed and delivery tats are being breached. So you have to cooperate with your delivery partner to get the products delivered in time, because you have to understand each and every like states are delivering, like declaring each and every zones at containments without declaring it, right? So you have to cooperate with your logistics partner and get the parcels delivered, right? So coming to the next thing is how you incorporate all these things and convert it into sales, proper sales, right? So the first thing, again, the last mile, improve your last mile by getting a proper delivery partner, and you can see a multifold increase in your last like sales. The second thing is the TAT, improve your TAT. I know it's difficult to do it in this lockdown, but lockdown is going to get like improved. Like it's going to like decrease like once in the coming few days. So your TAT is going to improve, obviously. So that is going to remove away. So improve that, and you're going to see an proportional increase in your sales. The third thing is what we have seen in our company is implement the feature of next day delivery. At least you are going to see a percentage increase of 30 to 40% increase in your sales. Implement that feature. That feature is going to like at least 30 to 40 rupees hike in your say in per delivery cost, but that is going to give you a 30 to 40% hike in sales. Fourth thing is less touch points. Post COVID, that's the future that you have to give them to your end customers. Coming to what happens in the new feature of logistics and customer delight. See, now going in the future, although it seems counterintuitive, it's more from the pull feature. Customers are going to shift their focus more from a cost-based point of view to the performance-based point of view, because your end customers want that. So you have to select your couriers which are more performance-based, right? The second thing is governments and like each state governments are dividing this whole zones based on like either on red zones, orange zones, and green zones, or either they're dividing this country like each zones into containment zones. So you have to have in your gamut a whole serviceability of pin codes. So you can't do away with one like logistics partner. So you have to have in gamut a multiple logistics partner. So you have to have that to service 26,000 or at least 19,000 plus pin codes, right? At minimum. So if you are an e-commerce player or an online player or a marketplace player, right? The third thing, I'm going to repeat it again, improve your last mile. Otherwise you can't survive in an online industry. The fourth thing, the logistics, intelligent logistics solution. See, the intelligence logistics solution is like the food industry. Even we are implementing it is like the food industry. What is going to happen in the future is the whole logistic industry in the online industry. What we are going to see the shift is we are going to see a shift of feedback based shift in the online logistic industry. So we are going to get a feedback based the your end customer is going to give you feedback, and based on that we are going to like reroute, or we are going to give you like prioritize the couriers. The fifth thing is again the faster or the fastest task. So that's in summary is what I have to cover. I'm happy to answer from Pickers and like whatever you have to throw at me. Like, yes. Wasim, it's over to you.
Thanks, Vidhiman, for the insightful knowledge. And of course, logistic plays a very, very important role in the overall e-commerce business. And your thoughts on choosing the right delivery partner is very, very important. Thanks once again. And of course, the audience answer to the choosing the right delivery partner at the right time is most important. Now, question answer session. We have a few questions from the audience. It is open for anyone to answer the questions. But yes, the audience is Mr. Amol Garg has a question. I own an apparel brand which I'm taking online, and I am currently building my e-commerce website using Shopify. My product ticket size is somewhere around 300 to 2,000 rupees. Keeping in mind 20 to 30,000 a month, what marketing strategy do you suggest to maximize the sales? Amit, would you like to answer this?
This is with regard to the performance marketing.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question one more time, Wasim, please?
Sure. So I own an apparel brand, which is I'm taking this online and currently building an e-commerce website on Shopify, and the average selling price of somewhere around 300 to 2,000 rupees. Keeping in mind the budget of 20, what marketing strategy would you suggest to maximize the sales?
So there are two parts to it. One is what is the planning that you're doing on your website in terms of the assortment, in terms of how you're structuring your home pages, category pages, product pages, how you are placing your pixels, how you are integrating events onto your Google Analytics and creating the advanced analytics flow, so that whatever marketing you do, you get a continuous feedback on those stuff. So it's very important that even before you start your marketing, you get your platform right, you get your website in order. The other piece is from a marketing perspective, considering the budget that you have, it's important to identify the channels where you can create a funnel for your website. So you would have to create a funnel where more customers are coming. There is budget that is allocated for retargeting customers who are just browsing the products, who are just browsing your categories, and then you would have to allocate budget for your retargeting strategies for abandoned carts, people who are adding to the cart but not making a purchase. So considering all of that factor, I think you can start with the Google search ads. You can start with retargeting on Google Display Network. You can create a few top of funnel advertisements on Facebook, which can be brand related, and then you should definitely put some spends for retargeting on Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. But I mean, any specific questions that you have, happy to answer that.
Thanks, Amit, for answering the question. And Mr. Amol Garg, I hope your question get answered over here. We have a next question from the audience. Ms. Tapasya asks that how to segregate investment for ads and promotion, and also how do we determine which platform is best in terms of return on the investment? Anshul, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, of course. I think that's a very relevant question. I'll tell you, of all the brands we work with, right, a lot of common trends emerge. Okay. Number one, if you are in the impulse category like apparel, okay, 70% of your sales will come from paid ads on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm talking about small brands, large brands, new brands, old brands. Remaining 10 to 20% will come from Google, Google shopping ads. These are people when who are searching on Google, they will come to your website and purchase. And the balance 10% can come from your activity on your friend circle, your organic traffic, your friends and family and stuff like that, right? So as a brand today selling online, I think you have very limited choices: Facebook, Instagram, Google. I know some people have asked about TikTok also. TikTok is still an emerging platform. Based on my experience, what we have seen is it works well for average order values lower than 1,000. We have tried to run a lot of pilots for like 1,500, 2,000 rupee products. They don't sell on TikTok as per our limited experience. And it works very well for beauty, wellness, Ayurveda categories. We still haven't seen a lot of success on TikTok for apparel categories, but I'm sure it's still, the rule book is yet to be written. So as a new brand, if you're just starting, I would say go to Facebook, Instagram, don't spread yourself too thin. If you have an existing team and you're looking to scale up, I would say go to Facebook, Google, Instagram, and TikTok. That would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Anshuk. Tapasya, I feel your question get answered over here. As Anshuk mentioned, yes, that's a very right option to invest in the right way in terms of the ads and other perspective.
And Wasim, if I may add something here.
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So another thing which you might like to consider, as Anshuk also said, that it totally depends on the category and the value of the ticket that you have. It depends. The choice of platform depends on that. But more than the choice of platforms, I think what is more important is to understand the marketing channels you want to take. It could be ads, it could be endorsements, it could be even influencer marketing, what I was talking about in my presentation. So you can have a mix of channels. And if I talk about channels, our experience has been that TikTok has been very, very good, and it is picking up pace. So you might like to consider that also, but I would agree with Anshuk that it could be for low ticket items, may not be for high value items. So my piece there.
Thanks, Dipesh, for adding. And probably I have a next question for you as well, which is related to cross borders. So we have a question from audience: how you cater margins on cross border sales? So
how you cater? Sorry,
Dipesh, how you cater margins on cross border sales? So Dipesh or Gaurav, you would be keen to answer this. Gaurav?
Let me try.
Yes, Gaurav, to you.
Let me try and take a stab at it. Couple of things I think you need to consider when you're selling cross-border. Very important aspect comes your selling price. And since you're not necessarily selling in rupees, you're selling in dollars, your margins are typically way higher when it comes to, especially on a marketplace, when you're selling on cross-border side. I think two important aspects which one need to be very sure about. One is logistics. You need to control your logistics cost under control. And when you're starting new, you will experiment and not necessarily send bulk orders, which can bring in efficiencies and economies of scale. But the way I see it, and that's what I covered in my presentation, you should always start with the pilot. You should. I don't think the margin question is a very, very important question, which when it comes to cross-border, your margins are way better when it comes to cross-border. It's just that whether your product will get acceptable. That's why you need to do those small experiments and pilot. And to start with, initially, you should be willing to actually work on as good as zero margin. Once you see your product being sold or it's something which has started working, then you will be able to build the economies of scale, and you can work with guys like Adyogis and some other players. So to optimize the COA or CSE, whatever you want to call it. And that's a playbook for me.
Okay. Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for answering the question. So I have a next question, probably which is related to logistic, and Ridhiman would be keen to answer the same. Ridhiman, the question is, what should we do for reducing shipping costs for heavyweight packages?
For heavyweight packages, yes.
Yes.
See, the thing is, first thing about heavyweight packages is we have two things. Is first thing is we have two plans. Is first thing is about selecting is the right partner, right? So first is we have the premium plan is, and the second is the medium plan. So in that way we can reduce the pricing. The second thing is both are good, right? So in that way we can reduce the pricing. The third thing is the proper packaging. Without the proper packaging, until unless the seller do the proper packaging, right? A lot of times what the seller does is without proper packaging, they left out the proper edging, right? In heavyweight packaging, the volumetric weight plays a lot of role, right? The LBH comes into picture because in heavyweight, it's not the dead weight. It's not the kilogram that plays a part. It's length into breadth into height, right? It's a proper calculation. So unless it's a proper efficient packaging, it's the carton is properly efficiently packed. We cannot make it proper, charge it into proper weight, right? It's a proper mathematics, right? So they have to get it into proper packaging, right? So if it's like suppose you are sending like proper like snacks, right? So you cannot send it like a air filled of chana or something like this, right? So nowadays it's a lot of fashion of sending chana packets or like dry fruits or something like that. So a lot of people do is they send of this much amount of gap in the packaging, right? So this much amount of gap in length, this side of length will add of at least 1 kg, right? 1 kg this side, 1 kg this side. So that's like ridiculous, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
So that they can reduce by reducing the packaging, right? So that translates into the packaging cost, right? So if they reduce the packaging cost, so it's so they can easily do that, and rest they can easily come to us, and we can reduce their cost by shifting their cost to like different partners.
Correct.
Wasim, I'll
Thanks.
just add on to what Ridhiman said. Although I'm not from that industry, but I
No
do
worries.
have a background
Go ahead.
of logistics. I have spent good 15 years in logistics and supply chain. So what is important in logistics, from my understanding, is the volumetric weight. That's the term which is being used. So you have to be careful of if your commodity is voluminous, then you have to compact it so that you pack more kgs into the same volume.
Yes.
And if it is not voluminous, then in any case you gain the benefit of it being heavy.
Yes.
So volumetric weight is the key term which one needs to keep in mind while talking about any heavy or light packages. That's my one bit on it.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks, Dipesh. And of course, yes, choosing the right packaging material and a right packing way would lead us to reduce the cost of the logistic and shipping charges. So I have a next question, which many of the audience, this has come across from many of the audience, which says that we want to know how does one choose whether to launch their own website or build presence on marketplaces first? So it's open for all, anyone can answer this.
I'll take a jab at that. So it's actually a $1 million question, and the answer to that depends on whether you're trying to create a brand or are you trying to create a private label. So if you're trying to create a private label, marketplace is definitely a place where you should start with. Lesser acquisition cost, lesser cost of infrastructure, and also it gives you time to get feedback on pricing get feedback on the product, get feedback on the market fit for the product that you want to try on. But once you've got your product right, once you have understood your audience, you have understood the pricing strategy, once you've understood the what works well for you, and you're trying to create a brand, then it is very important to have your own brand store, because that's your uniqueness, that's your own digital destination for the customers. And we believe that it's a combination of both brand store and marketplaces that leads to long-term success. So you cannot choose one over the other. If you talk about medium to long-term strategy, you have to have strategies for both in place.
Great. Thanks, Amit, for answering the question. So we have many questions in line, but time doesn't permit us to have all questions answered over here. So audience, we will answer all the queries which has been put across by you. And specifically when it comes to any of the panelists answering this, yes, those will get answered. So I would like to end this session, and I would like to thank Amit, Anshuk, Gaurav, and Dipesh and Ridhiman for sharing their thoughts and giving a very insightful presentation. And of course, the overall audience would have got a great knowledge from this. Thanks all for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Wasim.
we are moving out for a, thanks. So
Thank
we
you,
are moving
Wasim.
out for a
Thank you, sir.
short break session, and we'll be getting back at 1 p.m. with the next session. Thank you.